When I say go back to the drawing board, that means get after it in some way, shape, or form, but with the understanding that progress isn't always upward.
What do you do when you are disheartened? When you look back and realize how far you've come, hopefully it motivates you to dig even deeper and go even farther. Some people, I think, rest on that complacency. I know we've all been guilty of that.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. How often do you celebrate yourself? Today, for episode, do this when you're feeling disheartened. So as you know, and I think we said this in Monday's episode, but Alan and I always want to talk about what's going on behind the scenes because I think that's the best way to add value. And I honestly think you can talk more organically and authentically when you're dealing with something. So that is what made me decide to do this episode. I was in the gym the other day, and I've been talking about the gym a lot lately, I know. And I was doing bench press. And I had this moment, and Alan and I talked about it prior to this episode. I had this moment where I was very, very humbled and very, very disheartened because I am doing weight that it just used to be a joke. So just for reference, I was bench pressing 135 on the barbell bench press. And at this time last year, I was doing 225 for sets of 6. And that's like a pretty good lift for somebody my size. And I have taken drastic steps back in my strength. And it's disheartening. It's frustrating. Mostly frustrating, but disheartening too, because that's the thing that I used to have. I used to be very, 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 very strong. And I had a moment in the gym where it was like, it's going to be a real path back to getting where I was before. And it's going to take way more commitment than I've been putting in. It's going to take way more consistency. I'm going to have everything really, really dialed in because an hour that I stay up too late is an hour that I want to sleep to make sure I can actually perform. And it's just a new level of pressure, stress, awareness, and disheartenment, if that's a word, than I think I've ever really had. And this is the other thing, too. We talk about identity a lot on this podcast, your identity. My identity in the gym is somebody who is very, very, very strong for their weight. Usually, if you put me in there with somebody who is stronger than me, if you were to break it down to Kevin weighs X amount, this person weighs X amount, usually I would be as close to, if not stronger than that person, pound for pound. That just isn't the case for me anymore. And I said this to Alan too. It's interesting how it kind of seems like it happens just overnight. Even though it's been trending that way for however long, it seems like it crosses this threshold of, oh, okay, that kind of sucks. I didn't expect that. It's this piece of awareness that is either a new low or it crosses the pain threshold where you say, okay, I've had enough of this. But what do you do when you're feeling disheartened? I think a lot of us run away. We say, you know what? I can't do that anymore, or I'm not good enough, or there's too much distance for me to cover, or I used to be better. And it's this really kind of shitty feeling, pardon my French. But what I tried to do is I said, well, Kev, number one, this didn't happen overnight. Just like you getting all the strength that you had didn't happen overnight either. Everything was a little bit different. You were more intentional about your workouts. You were more intentional about mobility. You were more intentional of the content you watched. I was watching way more physical therapy content and honestly, way more bodybuilding motivation. You were way more intentional about the words that you used about yourself. In terms of, I'm an athlete, I'm a bodybuilder, I'm strong, I'm capable of that. So I think for me, my natural thought was, I can't get back to where I was. I'm disheartened, I'm overwhelmed, I'm disappointed. What I think you should do when you're feeling disheartened is I think you should, number one, stop and really think about the fact that this probably didn't happen overnight, whatever it is. If it's a level of success you're trying to achieve, that's not going to happen overnight. If it's a level of quote-unquote success you feel like you've lost, that didn't happen overnight. And just because you're not where you once were doesn't mean you can't get back. For me, it was me taking a step back and saying, all right, well, this is the problem. You don't have any specific goals when it comes to fitness. You did the 10-pound and 10-week challenge. I don't want to do that again. What is my unique goal? What is my specific goal going to be? That's part one. So I just think when you're feeling disheartened, you have to go back to the drawing board. And I think the natural tendency is to run away from the drawing board. and say, you know what, I can't do this right now. When I think that's when you have to do it because the emotion is highest. The emotion is highest. The motivation is highest. The opportunity for you to make some sort of change is there in that moment. But I think a lot of us run away from it, and then that pain gets a little bit number, and it's less pain and it's less pain, and then we just stop doing it completely. So my goal in this episode is to have a conversation around that because, again, I don't necessarily have all the answers on this because I'm going through it right now, but I always feel like if it's something that I am going through or Alan is going through, it is probably valuable for you as well.
You said something earlier, Kev, that was really powerful. You said something along the lines of, and I might butcher this, something along the lines of, there are no overnight successes, they're just overnight awarenesses.
Yeah.
In other words, and I think it goes on the other end as well, in terms of you didn't just suddenly become weaker. Right. You just became aware of how weak you've gotten, quote unquote. And again, this is relative to where you used to be. I don't think you're weak. And again, everything is relative too. That's a really important piece of this, because just because Kevin doesn't feel strong, the truth is he's not as strong as he used to be. That doesn't mean he's not strong compared to other people his size. And it's important to understand that. But at the end of the day, it's you against you. And so in this context, when you are disheartened, all of us have had an experience where we look back on an old version of ourselves and we have one of two experiences. Either one, we're like, wow, look at how far we've come. I have a friend of mine who posted a picture, transformation picture. He used to do drugs, used to be an alcoholic, was in and out of jail. And this man has really just the ultimate redemption. This post was about how he used to feel hopeless and suicidal and drugs and grew up in a tough environment. And I've met this person behind the scenes and talked to him. I know he had a hard upbringing. And now he's this ridiculously inspirational. I mean, the left photo was a mugshot. And the right photo is just him in a suit and a tie, just looking, not just because of the suit and tie looking good, but like energetically looking healthy, physically healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, looking strong. And I know this person, I've coached this person a little bit. I know this person well enough to know that they're on an upward trajectory. It's very clear. You can see someone who's on an upward trajectory. And so when he looks back on that past version of himself, he's actually like, oh my God, look how far I've come. And that's an incredible feeling. That's a wonderful feeling. Enjoy that. Definitely, you've earned it. But, and this is the big but, and this is what this episode's about, there is the opposite. Most things, when I look back at my life, when I look back at my old photos, when I look back at me in high school or college or whatever, I look back and go, wow, I've come so far. 90% of the times I look back, it's like, wow, we've grown so much, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. There's only one arena where I look back and say, wow, I used to be so great in comparison to where I am now. And it's fitness as well, Kev. And it makes sense, brother. It makes sense, right? We used to surround our whole life with bodybuilders and bodybuilding and fitness and competitions and all that stuff. And in business, we look back, it's like, whoa, look how far we've come. In fitness, not so much. And we've done episodes like this before. The key that I want to drive home here is, what do you do when you are disheartened? When you look back and realize how far you've come, hopefully it motivates you to dig even deeper and go even farther. Some people, I think, rest on that complacency. I know we've all been guilty of that. When you're disheartened, do you avoid and run away? There's actually 4 responses that you can have to being disheartened. To emotional pain, really. These are the emotional triggers. These are what are referred to in psychology as trauma responses, trauma triggers. So let's say you looked back, Kev, and you saw... So Kev, Alessandro, and Alessandro's on the team, were looking at old photos of Kev. And there was Brandon. A video...
I think it was
that was Brandon?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That was Brandon. I think Alessandro and I were also looking at some stuff as well on your Instagram from the past. Yeah, that's all good.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we were looking at mine too, because of the fitness thing, right? Alessandro's, into fitness, and he's realizing, okay, well, maybe bodybuilding isn't exactly my genius zone, XYZ. So anyways, Brandon, Kevin, and I are looking back, and we saw a video of Kevin essentially putting a belt on, chain belt and putting, I think, 3 45-pound plates wrapped around this waist belt, and then you doing dips. And for those of you who aren't into bodybuilding, essentially, it's just a ridiculously difficult thing to do, and he was just hammering it out for reps. In other words, this is something very, very, very impressive, even though back then I doubt you considered it that impressive.
Yeah.
Maybe a little, but, right? And I used to do it with 2 plates, and I remember I used to think nothing of it for reps of 12. And now I could not do that, genuinely. And that's such humble pie, because here I am all these years later with all this effort later, and it's like, wow, I've gotten weaker. So what do you respond when you have disheartening, when you feel disheartened? And by the way, big goals, big dreams, dream chasers, you're going to be disheartened a lot. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, you're going to feel disheartened. It's part of it. Part of it. These are the 4 trauma responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fight is the one I recommend. Just dig deeper and start doing mobility, start eating better, start going to the gym, start going to bed earlier. Whatever tweaks you need to make, fight for what you believe in. Doesn't mean fight anyone else, but fight that inner battle of facing your fears and being like, you know what, I'm not as good as I used to be, but this is not the best I'm ever going to be. I'm going to get back there and then some, so fight for it. That's the best, I think, trauma response. Dig your heels in and just commit at a deeper level. Play at a deeper level. But the more common responses, quite frankly, and I'm guilty of these in certain arenas too, is flight, freeze, or fawn. Flight is you avoid, like Kevin talked about. Just keep avoiding. Right? The last time you didn't want to look at your bank statement was exactly when you have to look at your bank statement. Now Kevin and I are looking at our bank every single day, and then every week we check in on any spending we have. And we didn't always do that. Right? And we did pay for it. Freeze. Freeze is you just disassociate and just ignore it. You completely pretend it doesn't exist. You just do nothing. You don't dig your heels in, but you also don't and drive deeper and work harder. You just don't do anything. You just stay on the same exact trajectory you're already on. Ignore it, essentially, which flight and freeze are kind of the same thing. Fawn. Fawn means you essentially start to just appease the new story, the new identity. So Kevin's new identity is, I guess I'm not that strong. He could just start to act not that strong. You know what? I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. I'm going to start doing the bag instead. Or, you know what? It's essentially fawning, which is just you either transform your identity and accept it, or you fawn and just say, you know what? I'll go on Monday. It's no big deal. You just wish it away. You tell yourself a new story. I guess I didn't really like being strong anyway. When in deep down, deep down, Kevin really values being strong.
Yes.
And you could pretend all day you don't, but that's not fulfilling because you know it's not true. That's what fawning is tell yourself a new story. So what is your response to being disheartened? And I would argue that all of us could use the fight one, where it's like, let's fight for what we believe in. Let's admit the truth and let's get better. Because that's really the one that I think your future self will thank you for.
My name is Nathan Schwermann. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. I've been a client of Alan's for coming on 2 years now, and I really can't recommend his program enough. Alan's always there for me with great advice and holding me accountable every step of the way, and really leading by example. I've grown a lot in his program, but he's grown alongside with me, so I'd really recommend joining up on the program and joining the community.
And it's interesting because you can always, if you decide, you know what, that's not the identity I want to have anymore, fine, that's a different conversation. But we were talking about it before, and you said, well, do you want to get that strong again? I said, of course I do. It's not just that it was my identity and now I'm having an identity crisis and I need that back for confidence or so I look a certain way to other people. For me, I like being that. I value that. I'm proud of that. And I just think, honestly, transparently, I didn't realize, you don't always realize what you have. I didn't realize that I was as strong as I was because it was kind of normal for me. And I also didn't do a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, yes, I've been working, I had the compound effect. I've been working out for a long time, but I didn't start doing mobility until, I don't know, 4 years ago, really. I had foam roll and stuff, but I wasn't like I am today where I bought a $50 book that's like on all these, if this problem is happening, here are some exercises, and because it's never really what you think it is. But it's just interesting for me. This is really what I think my lesson is. when I say go back to the drawing board, that means get after it in some way, shape, or form, but with the understanding that progress isn't always upward. And all I mean by that is I might go to the gym and I might have bad workouts, but that's okay. It's better than me not going to the gym and just saying, well, I'm going to wait until I start having good workouts. And it's not going to work. It's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. For me, when I say go back to the drawing board, when I say progress isn't necessarily upward, it means we have to formulate some plan. That plan might not accomplish the 10 out of 10 goal. So for me, if my goal was to do, just say what Alan uses as an example, doing dips with 135 pounds around my waist, I'm going to have to go through 15 checkpoints before I get there. That cannot be my short-term goal. That's the goal. That's the final form goal.
Unless you want to rip your shoulder off.
Yeah, unless I want to rip my shoulder off. What are the indicators of correct travel? I'm just going to make that up. Where I get to a point where I say, "Oh, okay, I did 25 bodyweight dips. Awesome. I did 50 bodyweight dips. Awesome. I did dips with 25 pounds around my waist." I think that's what happens is in my mind, it's like I'm not where I used to be. I want to be where I used to be, except that's not the natural progression. You don't go from where you are to where you used to be. You go from where you used to be slowly to where you are, and then you have to reverse it and go slowly to where you used to be again. And that's when people get disheartened. I think it's either an understanding that, wow, I am way further off than I thought, because where I am today is not a representation of what I've been doing over the last month. It's a representation of what I've been doing over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So that's the interesting thing. And even for me, that feels good to know, even though I think I do know it. But I think when we get disheartened, it's very easy to get even more disheartened when you look at the truth. And the truth of the matter is, this is a journey. This is going to be a journey where it's something that you're going to have to be intentional about. And I'm not just using my story. If you're out there, you have your own version of this where you're disheartened right now, but you got to go back to the drawing board and you have to figure out, okay, what are the things that I have to start doing? What are the things that I have to stop doing? And then what are some realistic expectations that I can give myself along the way so I'll actually feel good in the process that will ultimately get me to the destination I want to get to.
Anyone who's listening, even right now, you most likely felt disheartened in some area before you found this podcast. Because this podcast might have been the drawing board. Anytime I've bought an online course or a new book, not every time, but a lot of the times it was when I was really disheartened. And I was like, I need a new solution. I need a new train track. I need a new direction. I need a new mentor or a new resource. I remember I went back and actually signed up for Darren Daily again. Darren Hardy wrote The Compound Effect, and he does this email list where he has a daily lesson every day. And I did it for a long time, and then I stopped doing it, and I was on point. And recently, I actually don't think it's working, by the way. I got to re-sign up or something. But I got rid of it because I was just cleaning my emails, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, you know what? I forget what made me disheartened. It was something that I was losing at. Probably fitness, most likely, considering that's the thing I feel like I'm losing at. Although now I actually feel pretty good. Yeah. And I was like, you know what I really miss? I think I miss Darren Daily. I think I want to go back to like Darren Daily. I hope that when you stop listening to this podcast, this might sound dark, I hope you miss it. I hope your life gets worse because that's proof that it was helping your life. I don't hope your life gets worse, but I do hope that we're improving your life. And if you take NLU out of your life is not supposed to work as well as with it. It's engineered to help you be on point. And if your life doesn't get worse when you get rid of it, then it's obviously not doing its job. And that's a whole nother conversation. But disheartening, this is one of the reasons people don't have big goals, is because you get really disheartened. I mean, if you want to bench press 225 for 6, that's a big goal. It's going to be brutal getting there. Yeah. I mean, if I had that goal, immediately my life gets 10 times more difficult. But it's also awesome being really strong. It's really
fulfilling to me. I think that's the part of it too. That's why I keep coming back to the fitness thing. For me, it's like, you know what it is, Alan? It really is this. I understand that I'm going to have to be way more intentional than I am. And I think that's just a level of pressure that I don't know if I'm ready for. With everything else going on, it seems impossible. Not impossible. It seems drastically more difficult than it's ever been. Because it's just a lot. It's a lot to do.
Full-time job.
Yeah, it's a lot to do.
Being an athlete is a full-time job.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. I've exercised every day for 260 days almost. And it is like, and it's only a half an hour, and at least 3 of those 7 days a week, I'm walking.
Yeah.
But it's really, I just
It's a
don't
lot.
think anyone, it's a lot. Yeah, people really underestimate how difficult it is to stay in shape, genuinely. And not only to stay in shape, but to improve. If you want to coast, it's not that hard. If you want to really improve and grow, I mean, you name any industry, podcasting, self-improvement, reading, learning, growing, math, walking, athlete, you name it, anything at a professional level. And at the end of the day, you and I used to compete at a semi-pro level, and it required a lot of intentionality. And we're not just going to, you don't just wake up like that. And this will be the last thing I say in this episode.
So this is the thing, and I realize this. So what Alan is referring to is the fact that we have a dinger. Mm-hmm. The problem is, then I just realized this because I was watching the YouTube. I don't know. No, I was listening to the podcast. The dinger, you can't hear it on the episode because we take the native audio and we overlay it on the video. So I think it'd be a giant pain in the ass to get it to do it. So we're just not going to have a ding.
So the whole time it was like it wasn't going?
It was just silence. Yeah,
it was just silence. We apologize.
Yeah, I don't think we should do it because I don't want it to degrade the quality, basically.
Of course.
I think it would be a pain in the butt to do it.
Let's do it manually. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. That's funny. So when you were sharing something earlier about your strength, 225 for 6, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Life is an accumulation. And I think about this all the time. I was on the phone I just got 2 new clients. They're starting a business together. And I had a moment where I was on this call and they got referred by Bianca. And I said, what did Bianca say about me? Just because I want to get context. Like, what do you know about me? Am I going to scare you away if I just kind of hammer it here? And they said, not much. She just said, you're unreasonably good at what you do. And I was like, awesome. And I had a moment. I was like, cool. I have someone I've never met before booking on my calendar to help them build a multi-million-dollar business. This was a dream. This is exactly what I wanted. 2 young, aspirational entrepreneurs with MBAs excited to start and grow a business. And I was like, you know what's funny? I wanted this when I was in my early 20s. I wanted to be a business consultant in my early 20s. It's been 14 years since I was 20 years old, and I am now having that really manifest. I coach 14 different businesses now, and that's not including all the early entrepreneurs that might build businesses later and the 33 other clients. That was one point just a dream, but that could never have happened in a day or even a year. It had to be an accumulation. It had to be an accumulation. Emilia and I are looking at our second home. And even in that process, I have these moments of like, I came from like very, very humble beginnings where we had no money. When my stepdad left, we had no money. And here I am, second home, we're getting a housekeeper. Like, this is unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable. And we're interviewing a housekeeper, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, whoa. But then I thought about it. It's like, well, I am 34. You know what I mean? I've been working my butt off for the last 20 years. So it makes sense. It makes sense. But if I took even a year off in those 20 years, I'm telling you, none of this would be a thing. And I just think people don't understand that. Everything's an accumulation. It's very important.
I think that's the highlight for me is I think I've coasted a little bit in fitness. I think that's what it was. And honestly, the 10-pound and 10-week thing did not serve me because that was just a level of pressure that I didn't want at that time. I didn't realize. What would you say?
Too extreme?
Yeah, it was too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I was burning myself on both ends to get that done in terms of the amount of cardio I was doing. It was brutal. That was a challenge. So I think in my mind, it's like, I got to do that again, but for 10 times as long.
Forever.
Yeah, forever. How am I going to do that? That's the lesson for me. And hopefully you'll have a similar or your own takeaway from this. But you got to go back to the drawing board and you have to get new awareness. Maybe it's perspective. I have those moments all the time where I look back and I'm like, I can't believe how far we are in business. I can't believe that 5 years ago, I started a podcast by myself and then Alan and I partner. It's like weird. And now my calendar is full. And when we're traveling, it's a nightmare to plan everything. Never expected that. Or I'm married. I'm married and I have a family, I have a wife and 2 little kitties. Like what? That's weird. I never expected that.
We have Tucker and Tariel, and it's like a family. Right. Yeah, we're
a lot
like
of
a bundle.
Things are trending up. That's great. Other things are either stagnant or trending down, or maybe they're not trending down, but they're not trending up nearly as fast as the other stuff. That's what it is for me. That's the lesson.
Hey, let's call a spade a spade. Fitness has been trending down.
No, because I think I've done mobility every time I've gone, which is something I didn't do for the first however many years. That's trending up for me.
I see. So it depends where you're zooming out. Yeah, so if you zoom out a lot, that's the point. Yeah, that's fine.
And I think I was only zooming out to the fact of like I can't lift what I used to lift, but not the fact that I don't have any pain in my shoulder at all. The thing that stopped me from bench pressing for so long, I don't have any pain in it anymore. Like, that's cool. Now, again, I could take that too far, and I could change my perception instead of my behavior. That's not what I'm doing. And I know Alan's thinking that in his mind. He's like, oh, no, Kevin's going the other way. But that's the takeaway for you. You got to zoom out. Maybe you're trending down. Maybe you're stagnant. Maybe you're trending up slower than everything else. But you got to go back to the drawing board. You have to get awareness, and you have to say, okay, logically, what do I do next? Emotionally, I feel weak and I feel like I can never be that strong. That's not true logically. It's just not. What can I do logically that will move the needle on the things that I want to make progress on? I'm glad we did this episode. This is a little therapy session for me. I needed this.
Yeah, it's good stuff,
and
man. Podcast
Alan
serves us as well.
Right. Alan and I so we're recording this on Monday. I have to say that. Tomorrow morning, we're flying out to Wisconsin. Shout out to Bobby Joe for connecting us with the school that she works at. We're going to give 3 speeches to the students as well as a training for the staff. But I know you and I are going to be together for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm sure you and I will get 3 workouts in together, which I'm very excited about.
Don't worry. You're about to feel really strong.
I don't know. I wonder.
Cardio-wise, I'm not so sure, but strength-wise, you're going to crush it.
There's not going to be any running, I can guarantee
I'm ready to feel weak. Maybe I'll feel stronger than I used to when you were benching that much. So
we'll find out. Next Level Nation, if you are listening to this podcast, there is a pretty high likelihood that you want a more next level community. I say this to my podcasting clients all the time. I say you have to start a Facebook group. And here's why. Because you could literally have best friends listening to the podcast, but if they don't tell each other they're listening to the podcast, they would never know. That's why we have a private Facebook group, so you can actually connect with other listeners who you already have an idea of what they're going to be like. Probably similar core values, core beliefs, and core aspirations. So click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. We would love to have you.
Also, as you know, the Next Level Hope Foundation is essentially a charity organization that every single year hosts 2 events. One is on Father's Day, one is a holiday event. This will be the first year that we implement both of those all in one year. Kevin and I will be matching donations up to $500. Our goal is to double every single year, and it's 34 days out as of right now. We rented out the YMCA, and there's a landing page. At the very least, please check out the landing page because I'm not doing it justice. There's so much information on here. It's wonderful. You can donate or you can attend if you are in the greater Worcester area. The goal is to have arts and crafts, food, make this day really fun. Kevin and I grew up with single parents, and the holidays were challenging because of finances and all that. So it's a way to really help single parents with their kids. Every kid will open a gift, and that gift will be due to your generous donations. I had several people, 2 different people actually donated to both of the charities that I'm doing, Books for Babes and Next Level Hope Foundation. And this weekend, it was really nice to see those emails come through. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Any little bit helps. I don't care if it's $5. Like, every little bit really does add up because there's so many people around the world that can donate to this. And we promise you the funds will go to a really, really good cause.
Next Level Nation, tomorrow for episode, Will People Think I Am Arrogant for Celebrating My Wins? I know that is definitely something I thought in the beginning. As always, we love you, appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.